Hey there, welcome to episode 137 of the FFS Talk audio program. I am your host, Dan Hugo. As usual, we are recording this at 11:41 a.m. Pacific Daylight Time here in Greater Vegas on Thursday, July 9, 2026. We normally publish new episodes of the FFS Talk audio program on Thursdays, usually a little bit earlier, but no guarantees. So that's the case today. It'll be a little bit later. Or it's, anyway, you know what I mean. If you're not familiar with the FFS Talk audio program, the idea is to create a discussion, a conversation, a debate, an argument around a particular topic focused on what works, what does not, and what we might do about it. There's usually more than one side to any particular issue. The idea is to create that forum for a structural discussion or debate rather than wandering off into the weeds. So what works, what does not work, and what we might do about it. Identify the problems. So usually there's something good. Identify the problems, which are usually bad, and then propose solutions. There's an old saying, what is it? Don't curse the darkness, light a candle, something like that. That's the basic idea. Anybody can complain. Truly innovative people will propose solutions. If you're not familiar with what FFS means, it is an abbreviation. It is well known around the world. If you don't know, you should hang out with more Irish people. Today's title and topic, norms. Hopefully wherever you found this audio program, you're able to locate the episode description, which contains the show notes, including a brief summary, which I'll read to you, and the links for today's episode, including a link to a book. It's on Goodreads. Unfortunately, I couldn't really find a better website or reference to it. I'm sure there is, but we'll make it work. So let's get started so we can get finished. It's already getting hot here in Nevada, Southern Nevada. It's my readouts here show 104 degrees Fahrenheit at 11:44 a.m. now. Yay. I grew up in Phoenix, so yeah. The summary of today's episode is as follows. Norms, social norms, structural norms, all of these, and there are more norms. 3 was enough. All of these are the things we all sort of expect if we know about them, and we can on occasion be surprised, especially if you travel. The links, as usual, the FFS Talk homepage, ffstalk.com, FFSTALK. More development coming. There's several things now that I must do, and I've talked about it for way too long. There are far too many things. Other things have been checked off on the to-do list, so that's all the defense I'm offering at the moment. Rationalization. The profile page linking everything at buymeacoffee.com/Dan Hugo. I've had that page for over 5 years now. You are not required or expected to pay any money. You can if you want. That's an exceedingly rare occurrence, but you are welcome to if you'd like. There's some biographical information. There are links to all of my audio programs that I produce. There are links to some projects on which I am working. There are some affiliate links. Those are affiliate links to things that I actually use. They're just straight affiliate links. I have no other relationships with the companies that are listed through those affiliate links. Be aware as well, there is a Buy Me an Update audio program published on Monday mornings. Its origin story is it used to be published exclusively at buymeacoffee.com/danhugo/posts. It is no longer exclusive because people don't visit buymeacoffee.com for podcasts. There's no RSS feed. It's not ideal. I wanted to take advantage of the fact that I've had this page for, it was less than 5 years at that point. So I publish there first, and then I republish, or I delay publishing to other places so it can still be found. Amazon, Apple, RSS feed, YouTube, have at it. The extra link for today's episode is a Goodreads link. As I mentioned, it's to the book. I only put the partial title here because otherwise they get kind of long. Barnga is a cool card game that we'll talk about in a moment. And of course I closed the tab where it was, so here we are. Barnga, a simulation game on cultural clashes, and that's by, even though it looks like a Thai name or maybe that region, I don't know his his ethnicity, or his culture of origin, I guess. They're co-authors. Siva Sailam Tyagarajan, Siva Salam Tyagarajan, and Raja Tyagarajan. I'm either really close or way off. There is a website called Thiagi, which I will leave to the listener to, if you're interested in this, the Thiagi group, Thiagi.com, Thiagi.com. And you can find a variety of resources. Now, the reason I'm going to talk about this game is, and those are the end of the links, so we'll get right into it. The game is actually quite interesting, and if you actually visit the Thiagi group, they seem to construct games and simulations for a variety of things along the lines of interaction and so on. So I could not find a direct link to this game on their website. The website is the group founded by the person who invented the game. I believe it was in 1980. But I have played this game, and I will explain why this is interesting. So I was taking a leadership Sunnyvale class. If you may have a leadership program, and where you live, there's a leadership Las Vegas, very expensive. The class I took for leadership Sunnyvale, not so expensive and a little bit more intimate, because Sunnyvale is a smaller place with some interesting things going on, some interesting learning opportunities, because of the way Sunnyvale is, Sunnyvale, California. So let me get some water here. So on one of the days in the class, it was a Saturday. There was like one Saturday a month for a year or something like this. So one of the Saturday classes, there was a person, and his name I don't know. And I want to say that he seemed to, I think he referred to, I won't try to say his name again, but the founder of the Thiagi group, the author, one of the co-authors of the book. And he said, the person that was giving the class that day, the guest lecturer, I suppose, he said, this is a game that I learned from someone, I believe he said from Thailand. And he said it was profoundly impactful for him and his pursuits. So he was talking about like adapting to other cultures and interactions. And so norms is effectively the thing that we were going to learn from the Baranga game. So I'll set it up briefly. And if you search for Baranga, by the way, it's Barnga. If you search for it, you'll find all sorts of academic references and more. I mean, there's plenty of search results. So I will give you the idea first. Now you know the context, and so we knew the context because of the title of the class for the day, the Saturday class. But the key was to not know anything else. So, which is a good way to begin any simulation. So we enter the room. There's probably, I'm going to say there was 5 tables of 4 each, and each table. So when we came into the room, normally we would have been arranged in like a horseshoe with long tables, but this time there were round tables with 4 chairs per table, and I believe we had 5 tables, so 20 people. It may have been 6 tables, but somewhere in there. We lucked out, and we had an even number of people by 4. So we all sit down, and we're going to step through the lesson for the day, the learning experience. So our instructor says, okay, what I want you to do is read over the rules, and as you're reading, if you have any questions, but then we are going to stop talking. Don't, actually, I don't even know if he allowed questions. I think he just said, stop talking. The key was to no longer share verbal information, verbal cues, right? So you have to be completely silent. So everybody reads the rules, put the paper back in the middle of the table. I think he collected them, and he hands out a deck of cards to each table. They're all the same cards, probably bicycle, probably red, maybe blue, who knows? And he says, now you've all read the rules of the card game, so start playing. So we started playing our card game at my table of 4 people, and we probably played like 2, 3 hands, got some momentum. We've all figured it out. We know how it works. And then he says, okay, now continue, no speaking, no talking to anyone. I want one person from each table to get up, and we're going to, rotate. So go to the table to your left or whatever. Right? So one person migrates from one table to another so that we're back to 4 people, but there's 3 plus 1 new person. He says, okay, now keep playing. And immediately, I think some cards were shuffled and dealt maybe, but I think depending on the table, here's the secret. Depending on the table you're sitting at, the rules were all different. So how the cards were dealt or whatever, suddenly the new person at each table is like, wait a minute, what are we doing? What are we playing here? I don't know what's going on. And so it became immediately obvious. The point of this was because you can't ask questions, you can't give advice, you can't advise in any way. You are subject to the norms that were established at the table, 5 minutes ago. Now imagine, and so the point of the class that day was, now imagine you're interacting with people who grew up in a particular culture, speaking a particular language. They enter a new culture, a new collection of norms. They don't even speak the language. They can't ask any questions. They can't read the signs. They don't really grasp some of the things that are going on. And so that's where they find themselves. So what you just witnessed here with this card game was very similar to that experience. And so it was eye-opening. It was very interesting. It was such a simple thing. I had not been quite the traveler that I would be much later, more recently, from my perspective today. But certainly I've looked back at that as an educational experience, worth a Saturday to be sure. So in the spirit and format of the episode, let's begin with what works. Now, these are my opinions. Yours may differ. That's how this works. So at some point in the future, will we have guests? I hope so. Have I looked for guests to try to get a guest to have a debate with? Not really. That's part of a different thing in the greater Vegas area. Just getting the word out is a challenge. So on that note, again, what works? So social norms, social rules, etiquette, these provide a basis for comfortable interaction without the need to negotiate at every turn. So in the case of the Barnga game, we didn't have to renegotiate the rules between each hand when the original table occupants started playing. They got the rules, they started playing, they play one hand, then another hand, then another hand. So we got the rules. We all know we have the rules, so we don't have to keep talking about the rules or questioning the rules. So you don't have to renegotiate these things at every turn. So who introduces whom when you're in a gathering of some sort, holding doors open, what we say when we answer a voice phone call, if anybody does that anymore. Mouth open or mouth closed while chewing food. The list goes on. There are so many things we probably don't even think about them unless we're in the situation. And then we just sort of know. We don't really have to ask so often. In the modern era, public shaming via TikTok or similar is a typical punishment for violating these customs. If you are chewing with your mouth open, you'll probably be a TikTok star for a moment, but you'll find out. Norms, especially social norms, can evolve with the times. Can evolve with the times. This is important. This is important because, as we know, changing laws takes forever. Using the correct fork during a meal is left to rare circumstances now if you are among high society, perhaps, or if you're in a very expensive restaurant where they're posturing for to impress you, to make that bill worthwhile. For the most part, any fork will work, right? Nobody's really getting upset about these things in these modern times. And whether to send a thank you note after an interview, usually a job interview, that has faded a bit. I don't know if anybody really does that anymore, which makes it difficult. And this is an example of what does not work, which I'll sort of inject here, is that if you are of a place or time where, we don't really send thank yous anymore, when I depart, I might send a follow-up email. Maybe I express gratitude for taking the time. Maybe I'm following up with a answer, but maybe or maybe not, right? Depends on how I've been trying to navigate the job market, whereas the person interviewing me may be of the older school of thought and says, I didn't even get a thank you. Or maybe of the newer school of thought and says, what's with the thank you? So it's really hard to tell. And this is where mismatch of social norms or expectations and whatnot can start to be a problem. We'll get to there in a second. But ask, and there are countless of these, and they've slipped away or they've changed. They've entered the discourse from non-existing before, or they've evolved in one way or another. So you could ask your grandparents for some comparisons, like, what did you used to do in this case? And they'll be, well, we had to crank the car, turn the engine on. Okay, it's a little too far back. Norms can also adapt to particular scenarios, often in a particular locality or a specific location under a particular set of circumstances, a time of day, things at dusk. The things may be a little bit different that you have to accommodate visibility and so on. So just about any collection of variables can lead to, these are sort of like, I guess, variable norms, which is counterintuitive. That's not really the right way to describe these, but norms for one place and norms for another, in the same town, whatever the case. Every possibility cannot be accounted for in the DMV regulations, for example. So who crosses that one-lane bridge in your town when there is an emergency vehicle approaching from a distance? That's something you can probably work out in the situation. Or maybe it happens enough. Maybe it's not an emergency vehicle. Maybe it's like a farm vehicle that's bigger. Maybe it's so something that happens with some regularity. Some norms are established. And then, well, okay, normally you'd go first because you got to the bridge first, but because of what's about to happen with the other approaching vehicle, then I'll go for, these norms can be established sort of, I don't want to say dynamically, but they can accommodate situations as needed. You don't have to go call the DMV and say, hey, we're going to need a special case added to the driver manual. It's just more to study on the day you're getting your license than when you're in line. Yeah, I had to pause there and get a drink of water, but I think the humidity in my place here is very low. It just feels very dry. So I'll apologize now. Today, my voice is actually just drying out. So what does not work? The things about norms, they can change because they are generally accepted and not really written down or enforceable. They can change. The nice thing about norms, they can change. Oh, okay. In light of what I just said. So you can change norms. They're adjustable. And you don't have to go through a legal process or anything. It's just eventually people say, you know what, it works better if you send a text message instead of calling. That will become the norm. And it can happen fairly quickly, especially between generational lines during a turning, if you like. This is also the worst thing when norms become expectations and become problematic when they are ignored or when they change suddenly. We can read the headlines in the United States here for some great examples where norms not codified into law can be ignored with impunity. So far, there can be some consequences, global consequences sometimes. So, and you will often hear reporting on such things as, well, I mean, it's not really a law. It's more of an accepted norm at the politics level or in the government circles, the inside baseball of governance norms, I suppose. So because they can change and there's no codification, there's not something written down or a formal, something that has been approved by a body of our representatives and been signed into law and so on, we'll just change it. So that can be a weakness of norms, and it can get worse than that. Norms can vary wildly with culture, baranga, which can lead to misunderstandings and worse. I mean, if you don't speak the language and you're somebody saying, put your hands up, and you don't know what that means, and you start walking towards them, that's not just a misunderstanding anymore. Now, at best, there is some embarrassment and maybe an exchange of understanding. Maybe you say, oh, when they say this, you put your hands up, and then you don't walk towards them. That's not funny. But the best case is not guaranteed by any means. Use of slang and misinterpreted manners at the dinner table are only the beginning of a path that can lead to unexpected and perhaps undesirable, even tragic outcomes. So just not knowing and not having a formal, like you can find books on, if you're going to Turkey, you have to understand these norms in Turkey that are not normal where you are. They're not the norms wherever you're coming from. So, but sometimes these are things that are sort of evolving, or they are regional, and you don't always know, and it's tricky. So yeah, hopefully the worst that happens is a good laugh when you no, you're supposed to eat that with your hands. Ethiopian food, for example. This may feel like a cop out of sorts, but bear with me. With the emergence of AI and so much engagement between people and AI tools, the way behaviors and interactions are interpreted may vary wildly between individual models and their training data, and then we humans. This is also true between humans. That was, again, the Barnga game. But AI may very well invent its own interpretations of the descriptions of norms. Like it can be trained on descriptions of norms from all manner of books, everything ever written down or thought by any human on the planet, of course. So the training data probably gives the explicit wording, but without any of the cues and established commonalities and the reasoning behind norms as they evolve and so on. There's no visual cues. You can't look at the person's expression. Oh, you're being sarcastic. And even that's an interesting one, right? Sarcasm can be a real problem if somebody, first of all, if they read the words, there is no sarcasm in written form, really, when you really think about it. So how can you train an artificial intelligence on sarcasm? Think about that for a second, especially with humans. If norms are presumed, but our interlocutor and an AI chatbot perhaps has no such commitment to norms, has no real experience with norms, cannot judge visual or audio cues or anything else about whether, we're being funny. Okay. It's the classic, if you've seen the more recent example of this, Project Hail Mary, when, I don't want to give anything away, but one of the characters has no references for these norms. Maybe it's like, you can think of it as an AI, and it doesn't understand jokes. It doesn't understand humor. It doesn't understand sarcasm. It doesn't understand wit. So it takes everything literally, and until you train, but even then you're training on a particular variation of the wit, the sense of humor, so to speak. So who knows where it goes at that point? I think we're all beginning to experience this at scale now. Hallucination is just the beginning of problems because you're not speaking to a human. So human versus AI norms are already different. Let me get some more water. Hang on. All right, we're back. Man, I'm really dry. I don't know what's going on. I apologize for that. What can we do about it? That's the third and final of the triumvirate of FFS Talk format. Well, first of all, in a global society, everyone needs to make some room for mismatch of norms based on language, culture, experiences on a social and individual basis. So, and by individual, I mean you may be from an area that has a different collection of norms. Even if you go down the street, hopefully it's not that sensitive. But if you travel to a different part, especially if there are definite demarcations like north and south of a state, you're from east, whatever, you're from the south side, you're from west side, whatever it is. So occasionally there'll be, where you grew up, but sometimes there's societal at a larger scale and so on. So this means asking or informing in a good faith way, so that there is something of a negotiated alignment. Oh, we do that here. Okay. And you're doing the other thing. Okay. And even if it's temporary, like establishing some sort of comfort zone. Do local norms always win? Like, oh, you have to follow our rules because you're a guest in our country. You'll hear that a lot. You're visiting my country. That's a little bit more forceful. That may be a decision to make in context. Like if you want to get a date or sign a deal and norms are getting in the way, negotiation is your friend. And that is a norm we can all use. So don't be so quick to build walls. You may find giving in a little bit probably will get you to the desired result. From a personal development standpoint, visiting other places, other cultures, and experiencing different norms is profoundly educational. I've barely scratched the surface of world travel, but you can pick up on it immediately that things are different here. Just be in a different country and cross the street. That's your introduction to we do it differently here. Be the visitor. Be the one out of step. Learn what it means to not know what is going on or what to do about it. And obviously try to do this in places where your language is not the one everyone else is speaking or writing. Signage. I was at a bus stop in France one time, humble brag, and it had all manner of instructions, but in French, and I do not speak French. As luck would have it, and this is a tool, and I didn't really mention it, but this is a tool that really comes in handy. It was the beginning of visual translation in Google. Actually, it was not a Google product yet. It was some other application I'd installed. So I looked at the bus stop signage. It was like a map with descriptions of things and so on. Through my phone, pointing, and it was translating. It was not 100%, and it was a little wonky, but I could at least figure out, do I need to know something before the bus gets here? Is this bus going to go where I think it's going? So profoundly useful. We can use these sorts of tools, but really in the most human of humanity, you should ask someone and they can tell you, and that's a nice way to make a little connection and learn more than you thought you would, perhaps. When we get to business and government, there is an entirely different collection of norms in place, often susceptible to much more subversion and problems. Bushes. Business norms are tricky. You may experience those as an employee or in a vendor relationship, for example. Oh, we're like a big family here. That's one that you will probably get some pushback on if someone has come from a really big company. Like, I have a number on my check. That's what I am here, right? Or whatever. It depends. It always depends. Business norms are tricky, though. So if you work there, or if you're doing a business-to-business vendor relationship or something similar, you may see things in a different way than customers who are kept at arm's length for a reason. You are not supposed to know how things work. Give us your money, go away. I know that's cynical. Someday look up why it's never a good idea to apologize from a business standpoint. Yeah, that's I always found that interesting. Government is basically the same, except your government, for as long as you can keep it, should not be using their norms to allow your government to break. In other words, they shouldn't be saying, oh, now we don't do that anymore because we just decided. Well, isn't that against the law? Oh, there's no law that says we have to do it. That sort of thing. So when norms are the reason things continue to function, then you will be profoundly disappointed to learn that, things are not working anymore because no one ever bothered. You can think of that as like governance debt. In computers, we call it tech debt. Like, oh yeah, one of these days we got to fix that. This means attention to detail and proactive voting and voicing. So the people that own our government, so if you're in the United States, that's supposed to be us. But that means you actually have to pay attention and you have to watch things like, hey, why are we not following the rules? Because those rules were norms. They were never written down and they're never committed to and never signed into law and so on. According to our own norms, though, this is unlikely as it seems, or as it needs to be. Not as likely as it needs to be is what I wrote. So that's probably the correct meaning that I was intending. So yeah, I think norms are one of those things that's just the way it works. Now, I just refer to software development and so on. I'm a software engineer, as you may or may not know. When things just work, and then you try to change things, and then suddenly everything breaks, you will find that there was all kinds of unaccounted for stuff. So this is one of the ways you can introduce or maintain technical debt, which is, it's working, don't touch it. Well, shouldn't we go and write some? No, don't touch it. Just let it work. But then later, when something changes or some other circumstance arises, a new person sits at the table and says, hey, these are not the rules that we're supposed to. Suddenly things stop working. So there's all kinds of practicality. And in the long term, it makes good sense to not to be, between people and communities and so on, social norms and the forms of etiquette and tradition and so on. These are often, no bad will come of someone using the wrong fork, for example. But in a business and certainly in government, there can be profound outcomes that may be unexpected when norms, which were always leaned on, and again, you'll hear this a lot lately, but it's not just one. You can say, when a politician says something, he's supposed to mean it, or she. So you could say, so I don't want to be picking on just the current administration, but if you say to your your electorate, the people who voted you in, and to everyone else, that I'm only going to serve one term. And then you behave like that until you decide, I'm going to change my mind. And then well, that's one of those norms. But you did say this, and there was a good reason for that, and now you're changing. So is it the norm that we always get lied to, or is it a norm that we should not be, that we should accept statements as true and then have them be true? That's something to think about. If you put political party into everything, it's like putting grapefruit juice in in anything. Ew, yuck. That's where I'm going to leave it for today. You can hear my voice doesn't want to be speaking at the moment. So thank you for listening as always. We're coming in short today, 32 minutes, not bad. And at some point we will begin to reach out. Lost my voice there for a second. We'll begin to reach out to people about completing the format. I like to think of the collection of episodes, now 137 of them. There was an episode 0, so 138 technically. There's a collection of topic ideas, the format, the general notion for one person talking. So if another person were to enter the Thunderdome here, there might be an initial like, okay, let's go through what do you think works, what doesn't, and then the debate about what we do about it, although it could also be about what works and what doesn't. Someone might come in and say, actually, everything you said that doesn't work does work. You're 180 degrees wrong. And that would be the beginning of the conversation. So I'd like to think that I've planted some seeds for eventual conversation and debate. We'll find out. So yeah, thanks for listening as always, and we'll catch you later. Check out Buy Me an Update at the beginning of each week on Monday mornings to figure out what I talked about the week before and any news and announcements upcoming. That's where I'll leave for today. Thank you so much. Bye-bye.